Welcome to the Business Leadership Series, where we engage with leaders who are making an impact on their worlds and who want to share their knowledge and experience for your personal and professional growth. The following interview is designed to inspire you to become the best leader you can be. Your host, Derek Champagne, is the founder and CEO of The Artist Evolution, a full-service agency building successful brands, marketing tools, and campaigns, and also the author of the best-selling book, Don't Buy a Duck. And now, let's begin today's Leadership Series interview.
Welcome to the Business Leadership Series, where our goal is to inspire you to become the best leader that you can be. Our guest today, David Baker. He is a product owner lead at RevUnit, founder of Launch Retreat, co-founder of Creatives United, a father, a husband, tech nerd, foodie, and interesting, was raised in Africa. Welcome to the program today.
Thanks for having me, Derek.
I'm going to have so many questions for you. You've got a pretty diverse background, even some music things to talk about. Okay. But let's back up for a minute and just kind of start and talk about your journey a little bit.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about growing up and tell us a little bit about how you got where you are today.
Yeah. So I was born in Ivory Coast, West Africa. My parents were missionaries and was there for about 5 years, and then we moved to Niger, West Africa. Was there till I was about 18. Graduated from high school, came to the U.S. My parents knew some people who went to JBU, so I sort of had a couple of connections there. And during my childhood, I guess, my teens, that sort of thing, I really have always been into building things. So I did a lot of welding, a lot of fabrication. I built a raft that we took down the Niger River for a few days, stuff like that. And so I thought, well, engineering makes sense for me. So so I went to JBU on an engineering scholarship and didn't do so well in math. I passed Cal 1 and Cal 2, but my Cal prof, Dr. Bluma, sat me down one day and said, "This really isn't for you. You need to switch degrees," which I'm very thankful for because I think I just stubbornly would have powered through it and finished. And along the way, I think I realized that I'd always been creative and into design. But the school I went to in Africa and just other kind of cultural things didn't allow me to explore art or design. I didn't even know that a design degree was a thing. But when I saw the design students at JBU, I thought, wow, that's really cool. I didn't know you could do that for a living. So I switched to digital media, didn't like motion and video and animation and that sort of stuff. So I switched to graphic design. It's more static design. And JBU's program is really geared towards branding and identity. And so I got really swept up in this idea that you could influence people using a brand in a really powerful way, and I liked the power angle of that. So that's kind of the direction I took with my career. In the early days, I was doing brand development and brand design within companies, and then stop me anytime if you have any questions.
No, keep
just
going.
Kind of rambling.
Yes.
And then I met up with my now best friend, Joe Payne. He was working at a company called Chandler Graphics, and he was wanting to take the company in a different direction. At the time, they had lost a couple people, and it was just he, and he went to the CEO, and he and I sat down, and we're talking about kind of where he wanted to take the business one day, and I said, "It sounds like you need a partner in crime to really do the things you want to do." And he said, "Yeah, why don't you come and talk to my CEO?" And so I came and talked to him. And at that point, he gave us sort of creative control of the company. We rebranded as Moxiox, started that business. After about a year of doing that, our sales had doubled and we were doing really well. And the CEO told us that I have a larger business over here, and this is great, but kind of a distraction for me.
Sure.
And so I need to find a way to offload this.
Okay.
And he made us a great offer. He said, "You can buy the business, but if you don't, I got to shut it down.
Okay.
And you've got 3 months." So that was really kind of a turning point for myself and for Joe as well. With regards to entrepreneurship, I never thought of myself as a business guy in any way, and I don't know as I would anyway now.
Yeah,
that's more of just a lifestyle choice.
Right.
But yeah, we did everything we possibly could to figure out what to do. Within the last 2 years before that, we had done a lot of business with entrepreneurs. We'd gotten to know Jeff and Brett Amorine and the whole movement.
Okay.
And got acquainted with all of that. So we knew that the investment route was an option. We explored small business loan route. We didn't have enough capital to back that. Ultimately, we ended up finding a couple of investors and going that route.
Okay.
It was good.
What was that? So when you had that moment of finding out that there's 3 months.
Yeah.
Well, I like to go to little moments like that. Was that panic, excitement, opportunity, a little bit of both? I mean, what was going on for you guys?
I think it wasn't really panic initially because we had 3 months. So both of us felt pretty confident in our ability to go and find the next thing if we needed to. The challenge was if we went down this road, the only way to see it through would be to fully invest in it and to not pull any punches. So we had a verbal agreement that neither of us would look for work anywhere. We sat down with our team of 5 people at that time and said, here's the deal. We want to buy the business. We need to go find investment. We don't know if we can. We've never done this before. If you leave, we won't be able to sell the business because you are half the value. Yeah. And we need you to stay and not go look for work and trust that we'll figure this out. And they stayed. So
there's a power in having a team like that too.
There is.
Yeah.
If it hadn't been for them, Joe and I couldn't have spent the hundreds of hours, hitting the streets to look for help.
Yeah.
And we definitely spent quite a bit of time out of the office, pulling in some favors, reaching out to people that we knew that we had met over the last couple of years. So
you mentioned still not thinking of yourself as an entrepreneur. You did an article that we read. I don't remember where it was, but where you said you've done 3 businesses, but don't think of yourself as an entrepreneur.
Right.
That you're more calculated. How is that? Do you think that approach has actually helped you to build more successful businesses?
I think so. I really don't like the idea of risk for the sake of risk. For me, it's all calculated, so it's all math. There is an element of belief in the business and your passion behind it, but I think it's only so helpful when you hit some hard patches and you need to power through. But at the end of the day, you got to look at the numbers, and if it doesn't line up, it doesn't line up.
So it can be vision and being okay with the risk, but the numbers have to add up, and you have to be strategic about it. Yeah. So do you see a stereotype of a lot of entrepreneurs that?
Yes.
I don't even have to ask
the question. Your question, but yes.
I do too.
I love the passion. I love the ideas, but those are the easy pieces. What's I think tough about entrepreneurship is once you kind of get a taste of it, it's really hard to turn it off or stop going.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of power in striking when the iron's hot. And if I had to give any advice to someone, it would be stop trying to make it happen when it's not right. You have to let things play out. And the odds are you only have your business because of about 50 or 60 other people that were around you at the time. Yeah. And if those people aren't in the right place, then you're not going to be able to start anything anyway. Yeah. So it's not just the idea and the passion and all that. It's the context that needs to be right for you to create what you need to create.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs prematurely launch or go into marketplace. And we talked to Fleetwood Hicks recently. He partnered with Mark Cuban and with Barbara Cochran and said, know how you're going to sell your product and all of those things before you go to market. And he commonly sees people that don't do that and build the whole product and aren't sure even how they're going to sell it. Yeah, and a lot of people neglect a lot of areas of their life. At Launch Retreat this year, we sat down with one entrepreneur who he is investing his own capital in his business. He thinks he needs outside investment, and what he's discovered is there's a balance in life and his business. I asked him, if I were to give you $1 million, how much would you put in your business? And he said $250K. And I said, then it's worth about a fourth of your time. Yeah. The rest of your time needs to be over here with a side hustle, maybe getting some extra cash, spending time with your family,
all these other things that are important.
Right.
You should have answered 100% to match
kidding.
what you're currently doing. So let's build some balance in your life, and let's find a way to give it what it actually deserves.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
That's great. So tell me a little bit, you talk about hard work. Hard work is good, which we've heard that before, but tell me your personal experience with hard work and why it's so important.
I think the context for when I said that was I think it's okay to do your time. If it's not time for you to start a business or you don't have the right idea at the moment, go to work and allow another opportunity to fund your existence so that you can be thinking about your idea and continuing to build on that.
Right.
Again, I think a lot of the success in starting a business comes from your personal network, your family, the people you know, the relationships you have. So if you're spending all your time working on your business and you're not developing that piece, you're technically it's sort of like a well of investment. It's like personal investment. You're drawing on it the whole time. You're not realizing you are, to create this thing. And so if that context, that personal piece isn't in place, then you're going to suck it dry. And at some point, if you're not feeding it, you won't really have the support you need to keep going.
That's great. So, I haven't heard that perspective on it. I like that.
So for me, it was, if the time's not right, I sort of had this quandary in 2014, early 2014, when I left Moxiox. I sold my portion of the business and wasn't really sure what I was going to do next. Obviously, at that point, I was an entrepreneur, right? So I thought, well, obviously, I'm going to start the next thing. This is the things I hear, right? And people tell you this, oh, it's so great you have your own business and you're doing this stuff. And so I exited thinking, well, obviously, I took like a month and a half to just chill because it had been like 70-hour weeks for 3 years. And so I just took some time to chill, sat down with a good friend of mine, James Eldridge, and he was in the middle of starting a business of his own. And I was bouncing ideas off of him, said, I could do this, or I could do that. He actually put me on the phone with his dad, who's a successful businessman. And he said, it doesn't sound like you have a real strong case to be made for doing something right now. And I said, that's
not what you wanted to hear.
I said, that's fair. And that's the value of surrounding yourself with people that don't agree with you.
Right.
And so I said, yeah, that's probably true. And I think I was still in the process of accepting that reality when I ran into Joe and Michael on the square one day. I was just checking out their space, and Joe said, do you want a job? And I said, sure. And the rest is history for the last couple of years, or I guess almost 3 years now.
That's cool. So tell me about, you've got an interesting background, the way you grew up.
Yeah.
How do you think your perspective and how you grew up influences who you are today?
Yeah. It's a good question. I meet a lot of people who, at least and this is very personal, like just for me, not necessarily applies to anyone else, obviously, but people who are interested in going and doing things later in life. I want to travel. I want to go see this. I want to do that. I've gotten to do a lot of those things already. So I don't have a strong drive to go away from where I am right now. And to a degree that helps me really kind of focus. I'm not working right now to go somewhere else. I'm working to be here.
Right.
I am a little bit of a homebody. My wife will tell you that, which doesn't make sense given my background. I love to travel. I love to meet new people, but I am in a stage right now where I'm very much enjoying my network, where I live, who I work with. I'm enjoying momentum. For me right now, it's about momentum and building that up so that I can – it's sort of like a flywheel to me, if you're familiar with the concept of a flywheel. Right. You want to build up the energy so that when the time is right, you can do the thing you need to do, because you've got to draw on that energy for a little while. I don't see myself being in a business in the future where I need heavy outside investment. Maybe that's I think that's a personal experience from Moxiox as kind of a lesson.
Right.
But, and so for that to play out, I need to have a certain level of personal capital and momentum around me to do something. So, yeah. Yeah.
I'm in a similar boat. I understand that. So, you talked about hard work before. You talked about paying your dues. Any other input you have on
I would qualify the pay your dues and hard work by saying don't work for terrible people. There's just no reason to work for terrible people. There's a large agency around here that I worked for a little while, where the culture was just really rough. And that was right out of school. I was one of like 3 interns to get hired. And it was fine. It was exciting. It was 2009. So the economy was just kind of barely thinking maybe we can come back, but it was still pretty bad. And I got to the end of my stint there. Fortunately, it was a paid internship, so it wasn't like I was working for free. But it was a lot of late nights, questionable legality around hours and getting paid for extra time and all that stuff. But I mean, I was so swept up in we're working with this brand, and on the other end of the line is Jay-Z, and like, this is cool, and like doing this, and I thought, this is absolutely what I want to do. Obviously, I know that the creative director is working 70 hours a week, and he doesn't, his marriage is on the rocks, but I can do it, right? I'll figure it out. And I got to the end, and I applied, and they said, the economy's terrible. We're actually firing people right now. We're not going to hire. And I was really down, and I thought, well, clearly I failed, or I've picked the wrong path, or I don't know. And later I look back on that, I think that was like an amazing thing that happened, fortunately. So I didn't get sucked into the machine. And because I am stubborn, and I think I would have powered through and would have probably shorted myself in other ways. Yeah. So
that's interesting. I understand that machine. I took a different path and found myself back in the machine. Yeah. The machine I wasn't going to participate in, and it hit me with a depression, and it was a big deal in my timeline of my life and being an entrepreneur. So tell me about, if you don't mind, about how you deal with disappointment or failure beyond just that experience there, but as a professional, even though you don't label yourself that, as a successful entrepreneur, businessman. What does disappointment look like for you, or when you hit it, how do you get past it?
Family is important for me. My faith is important for me to fall back on. There's nothing better at the end of a really bad day than coming home and having a 3.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old smile and scream and run down the hall and give you a hug. If all else fails, that is like the best feeling in the world. And so I draw a lot of energy from that. And I think in some ways that stability and constant affirmation, at least at this stage, pretty unconditional love, is a big part of dealing with tough situations in life. I think some people, perhaps who are on the more aggressive and entrepreneurial side of things, might see that as things that weigh you back a little bit or hold you back from working longer hours or doing more things. For me, it's the only way that I can do a lot of things is having a kind of a counterbalance over there. So, so that's one piece of it. The other piece is a very strong self-assuredness. I can be an arrogant person, and I struggled with that through high school and college and some of those things. And I think part of what didn't help that is I do have a personal I feel comfortable with myself and who I am and what I can do. When other people disagree with me, I can take that with a grain of salt and apply it genuinely and learn from that. But I also feel very confident, and so I use that a lot to help shield myself from things. Be mathematical when it comes to feedback in bad situations. Kind of look at both sides of things, and where I'm short, kind of try to shore that up, and where I'm being hit unnecessarily, move through that and ignore it, and then move on. So that's great. Yeah. Okay. So some of your hobbies, I've seen cooking, music. Tell me about your passions for music and for cooking. Cooking for sure. My wife is German, and I'm half German. She grew up in a household she spoke German before English, and she grew up a lot of just family and cooking and that sort of thing. And later on in life, my parents were doing language study in France. And so they spent a lot of time there. And so my mom picked up a lot of French cooking techniques. And growing up, I learned from my mom when it came to cooking. But I didn't really dive into it until end of college when I was married. fell in love with cooking. For me, it's a way to kind of turn things off and focus on something else, and then there's a reward at the end. And I like the challenge of doing something that is hard, and I like the creativity of that. Recently, that's manifested itself in the last couple of years and just fully investing myself in barbecue.
Yes. That's awesome.
I love smoking things.
That's awesome.
My wife, I will joke, but I'm half serious that everything's better smoked. So I'm this weekend, I'm cooking a brisket. So I have fully invested myself in the barbecue kind of world, and that's sort of my main hobby.
So you've got all the gear.
I do. I have some gear. Yeah. I'm working on it. Cool. It's a work in progress. If there's a hobby I can justify with my wife, it's a hobby that delivers smoked meat.
Oh yeah, why not?
Yeah. So
do you enter competitions, or is it all just for friends and family?
I haven't done any competitions yet,
but you might someday.
I have entered personal competitions at work with people.
Did you take those?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. No, I'm good. I don't know as I'm competition level. I would love to. I would love to get a large smoker and go and compete. I don't think that's a smart investment at this point.
I've got a friend that goes once a year to Kansas City.
Yeah,
and has won number one a couple times, and is disappointed if he comes in too far. But he just loves smoking that much.
I think next step for me is probably to meet some people that do this on a more professional level, and maybe just hang around them and learn some things. Yeah, but for right now, it's a fun challenge because there's a lot of science, and because the cook times are so long, 12, 16, 18 hours, there's a lot that can go wrong over that amount of time, and so it's really it's a kind of an art to get it right.
It is definitely.
So I really enjoy that. Music for me back in 2005 was kind of when I got into production and digital audio production. I don't play an instrument. I play keyboard a little bit. I can't read music. I've never been able to read music. It's all by ear. Yeah. And I just really enjoy creating music, mostly for myself. I was part of a label for a number of years and produced some music and got it out there and made enough money to go out to eat a couple times. Right. So it was sort of a nice perk. I never really did it to try and become anything. But I am currently in a very mediocre way with my massive amounts of free time, trying to find a way to still do that, work on that a little bit. Someday I'll put out an EP, an actual full album of some sort.
Is that therapeutic for you as well, like the cooking?
It's more frustrating for me because it's I'm very picky. When I started out, it was all about melody and composition and just the wonder of being able to create something from nothing and then listen to it. You know, my favorite music was my music, and so that was a lot of fun. And then at some point, I started to really get into the technical and mastering side of it, and that really killed the creativity for me. I heard everything wrong and spent hours and hours and hours playing with compression and equalizers, and I couldn't get the sound I needed because I didn't have the training I needed. I got a lot better, but in that process, my creativity died, and I took a little bit of a hiatus for a couple of years. And recently, coming back to it, I'm trying really hard to ignore the perfectionist side and move through, and it's become a life obsession for me to try and strip things down to the core, kind of the minimum viable product angle. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do now is everything I do, think about it as what's the first iteration of this, because it doesn't have to be the last thing, and I can, I will, if it's important, I will continue to build on it. Yeah,
I like that. And I've done some stuff with music in the past, and I've been a part of projects that became so technical that I lost the joy of it. Yep. And I've got buddies like Joe Purdy, who would capture things on his first take and put it out there, and you could hear the flaws in it, and all the musicians would say, there's some errors there, and then but the public loved it and consumed it and became big fans of it. Yeah. So there was an art in putting out his first thoughts as well. So I guess it's just depending how you look at it. Yeah. But that's a rabbit hole of technicality sometimes when you're looking for perfection.
Definitely.
So what are you most proud of, professionally and personally? I'd love to know.
Personally, my family, my wife and my little boys. They're awesome. So it's kind of
Two boys.
Yeah.
What's the energy level like at your house?
High. Not in me, in them.
Sleeping and loud are the two.
They are, they are rambunctious. I was chased out of the house this morning with some plastic dinosaurs and roaring. So it was crazy.
That's great. No dull moments for you.
No dull moments. And my wife actually just went out of town this last weekend to Dallas to see her parents. And so I was a bachelor for 4 days, and it was terrible. I did get some things done. To a degree, I found, though, that the restrictions I have and the other responsibilities I have in my life force me to have only a small window of time to work on other things.
Yeah.
And what that does is it forces me, the constraint helps me focus and get a lot done. So I'm actually more productive when they're around and I've got lots of other things going on.
You had a deafening silence with them gone for a few days.
I would need to practice at it. I hope never to have to do that again. I love my life the way it is. But I don't think I'd be very good on my own. So.
I have very small windows, very small windows of time that my kids aren't running around.
Yeah.
And it's eerily quiet when they're not.
Yeah, it's weird.
Is everything okay?
Yeah. And then professionally, what I'm proud of, that's a hard question. I think I'm proud of the relationships I've built with certain people.
Yeah.
The things, the businesses, the design, the brand work, the products, all of that is an outcome of those relationships, because I couldn't do what I do without the people around me, and I have to remind myself of that. It's not me; it's everyone else around me.
Right.
There's this lone wolf mentality in entrepreneurs. This kind of myth. We talk about the Steve Jobses of the world and everyone else, and they're just really tiny. They're interesting and they're smart and that's all fine, but they got there on the backs of thousands of other people, and those are the actual interesting people. It's everyone else who did all the work to get there. I do think you need leadership and influence, but I think there's a lot of collective creativity and power in a group. It's a lot harder to get a group to do something than it is just you personally spouting off all truisms. And
I agree. I think a lone wolf can be an owner operator.
Yeah.
But to build a business that's servicing many and it does good, you're not going to do that with a lone wolf.
And I treat a fair amount of my life as a business, in the sense that I think about input and output and value and productivity, and so I'm, in that regard, see all the people in it as the things that help me do what I need to do, and so I need to constantly remind myself to serve and invest back into people, which is really hard to remember and do. And I'm sure that I fail more than half the time at it, but I do try to remind myself of that.
And you're aware of it, which is a big deal.
Yeah. Yes. I try to be aware of it. Yeah. I try to have moments of self-reflection and centering, where I remember who I am, where I am, why I am where I am, and who helped me get there, and then that kind of helps put things in perspective.
Yeah, that's good. Tell me about Creative United.
Creatives United, yeah. So Creatives United is a community of creative professionals and not professionals. We have we host events of all types. As long as the theme is creativity, it's valid. So we had a book reading, we had a bronze pouring, we had a culinary event with Miles James at 28 Springs, and music and art and everything in between. And ultimately, it just comes back to, if it's creative, then everyone's creative in some way.
Right.
And I think some people struggle with thinking of themselves as creative, but I've met some very creative brain surgeons and engineers. And so, and these are people I've met at these events. And so what we did was, back in 2012, Joe Payne, Donnie Epp, and myself created this group. Didn't know if anyone would come. Our first event was 70 people. So we're like, wow, so there's a thing here. And it fits and starts over the last 4 years, almost 5 years, of getting these people together. And what's been really interesting is, even at times when we've taken a long hiatus, 3-6 months, when we hold another event, people show up again. And sometimes it's the same people, sometimes it's totally new people. So we've got a really interesting model, and this year we've been putting a lot more effort into it and are growing that. So yeah, I'm really, we created the group because we wanted to go somewhere to be around these types of people.
Sure, yeah.
And to a degree, there's been some success there. I think it's one of the longest running, if not the longest running creative group in Northwest Arkansas.
If somebody wants to learn more about that, what can they do?
CreativeUnited.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You have an event coming up soon?
The Made by Few conference that's coming up to Bentonville.
Yeah.
Creatives United is putting on 4 workshops at the beginning of that conference. And then we've got probably an event in November I'm trying to get secured right now. I really want to do, for years I've wanted to do an awards type of thing, a creative awards thing. Typically the people who get the spotlight are the agencies and the design studios and that kind of thing, and that's fine. I think they have a place, but to me, there's a lot of creative things going on that are not that in that space, and so I'd love to do something like that, but I don't know if we'll get to that this year.
It's exciting though.
Yeah.
So what about the launch retreat?
Yeah. So launch retreat was born out of a conversation I had with James Eldridge back in early 2014 when I had left Moxie Ox and wasn't sure what the next step was. And I said, what was really frustrating is in my experience, there was not really a great place to go to accelerate the connection piece. So I talk about this kind of personal investment angle. Building that momentum and energy and that capital is really difficult. I spent a lot of money on lunches and coffees and trying to meet smart people, and then they tell you things, and the first 10% sounds right, and so you listen to the other 90, and it turns out the other 90 wasn't that great. And it's as a young person, it's really hard to discern between those things and between people. And so what you need is a place where there's been filtration and selection and a specific experience built to help you be who you need to be, and honesty. I just never got a whole lot of honesty and straight shooting. So James and I were talking about this, and it resulted in us saying, what about an event where we bring some people out to a cabin for 3 days, 3 nights, and we bring in 15, 20 retreat leaders, and we beat them up, and then we build them back up, and then we have really honest, frank conversations till 1 a.m, and then at the end of it, we build an action plan. And we said, hey, I'd go to that. And so I just created something that I wanted to go to.
Wow.
And then the other angle for me was lower end of the funnel. So post revenue, individuals who are in this for the long haul. It's not just an idea. Individuals who have some personal investment in their business or have been totally self-funded. They have a lot more understanding of how to apply what they have and where they need to apply it. If you've not having to put in very much, you really don't have a good anchor on the value of certain things. And so spending dollars that you just received for an idea is kind of nebulous for me. And it happens, know, and then there's much ado about nothing though, I think there sometimes. So there are very few Ubers. And even the valuation there is questionable. So I wanted to work with small business. I was in small business. And when I say small business, I mean, you can still be a multimillionaire and be a small business. So for me, the scale was still there to make it interesting. And so we created this space. We went in 2014. We brought a bunch of people together. We had 3 businesses. And it was awesome. It was one of the best weekends of my year. And so I said, well, we should do it again. So we did it in 2015, and we just finished here in 2016, our 3rd event. And it's been great. We had 3 companies first year, 4 the second year, and 3 this year. And I don't think we can go a whole lot further than that as far as scale. It's hard to serve 5 individual companies.
So how do you select those companies?
Carefully. Post revenue is a big deal for us. Having some sort of money to deal with, and preferably money that you've generated yourself or not necessarily received as investment.
Sure.
And then humility is a big factor. Being open for the entrepreneur to be open to feedback and development and being very self-aware of who they are and where they do and don't have strengths.
Right. Yeah.
Is an important thing.
And that's difficult to find sometimes.
That is difficult to find. I won't lie. Our market is very small. We're struggling with that right now. And so I think the future of Launch Retreat will probably be expanding to other cities.
That's cool.
And then also variations on the event, maybe one around leadership, which is a little bit larger network. But entrepreneurial leadership is almost more interesting in some ways because there are these VPs and these SVPs who are put in scenarios where they're dealing with budgets that are larger than these small businesses.
Right.
And teams who want and crave small business type of scenarios and leadership.
Right.
And I think you can, to a degree, there are some limitations, but I think to a degree you can operate like that within a large organization. And so helping leaders understand how entrepreneurs and small business owners think about business and leadership and meshing that with the corporate kind of environment.
I like that angle.
There's some opportunity there. So that's probably going to be next year.
That's awesome. That's exciting. I like how you're expanding that.
Yeah, and I don't know where it's going to land and how it's all going to work out. Startup Junkie has been a huge sponsor for us and is really tight with us on helping us expand that out.
Great.
Their reach is so broad,
right?
But in there's a small kind of niche of individuals that fit kind of what we're looking for.
Cool.
And it's been great working with them.
Well, tell us what's next for you.
What's next? Ooh, I am not sure. I am building momentum.
Yeah.
And working with great people. I defined about a year or two ago my purpose as an individual to create great things with great people. So I feel as long as I'm doing that, I am headed in the right direction. And I do believe that business and great opportunities come out of the alignment of a bunch of different scenarios in a certain context. And I don't know as you can fabricate that all the time. Right. Sometimes you can force it. If you've got lots of money and you have an idea, then you can just go do it. That doesn't mean that it should happen or that it's a good idea to invest money in. But I want to be ready when the time comes. I want to have smart people around me. You can't ask for favors, which starting your own business and doing some sort of venture really is asking a lot of favors, even though it feels like you're bootstrapping and doing yourself all the time.
Yeah, you're right.
It's asking your spouse or significant other to hang in there with you. It's asking your kids to be okay with what that means. Mm-hmm. It's asking your friends to, maybe asking for favors for them. It's asking professional contacts for intros to people who are important and can help you out. So you got to give to get. And I want to put myself into a lot of things so that when the time comes, I'm not being unfair.
Right. Exhausting relationships.
I really want to come out of that and be successful in the transition to whatever that is. Yeah. So for right now, it's creating these creative events and meeting smart people. Joe Payne and I do brand development and strategy work through Creatives United. It is a for-profit entity. We explored the not-for-profit route, but there's a lot of boards, a lot of money raising, and we've never really needed money to keep it going. Yeah. So I'm totally fine being for-profit. But that's really kind of a side thing. He and I just really love brand development and brand strategy, and so we do that as a partner to an individual who's just getting started or an agency of record that exists but isn't maybe as experienced in brand development. Yeah. Wants to get that piece done and then move forward. Cool. We just like those projects.
That's cool. Last question.
Yeah.
You've lived in other places. You're kind of a homebody.
Yeah.
You're already doing all these things that you love, but is there anything else on your bucket list that you can think of that you haven't done yet? It can be something that's just fun.
Yeah.
That's you've yet to do that you want to do soon, or that you'll do at some point?
I want to be involved in something that reaches millions of people at some point. I don't know if that's a product or a community type of endeavor or what it is, but I feel that's something that I can do at some point.
Something big impact.
Something, yeah. I want to impact people at that scale. I don't know if there's any logical reason behind that other than it sounds like something I would get a lot of satisfaction out of. And then food. I see myself heading down a path where someday I will be in the food business in some way.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I don't know when. I don't know with whom. But I would really love to be. I'd really love to make food for people.
But you'll know it when you'll know the opportunity when you see
it.
I love that you've got some of these loose frameworks that you're watching for, and having your plan for your life. So when an appropriate opportunity does come up, you're going to recognize it.
Yeah. Risk for the sake of risk has no value. Obviously, at some point there is risk because there's value on the other side, and you need to get there.
Right.
But I like to. I don't think you can fully craft your future. That's in hands larger than mine.
Right.
But I do think that you can put yourself in the right space and frame of mind, and have the right personal context prepared, so that when the time comes, you can leverage that.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
David Baker, thanks for being our guest today. We truly appreciate it. CreativesUnited.com. Is there any other website that you want to share? Any other information?
LaunchRetreat.com. Check that out. Check out RevUnit.com. I'm a product owner lead there.
Yeah.
Amazing company, building great things for great people. And if you want to connect with me, email me at david@creativesunited.com.
Awesome. David, thanks again for being our guest, and we look forward to seeing the next cool things that you're doing.
Yeah, me too.
You've been listening to the Business Leadership Series, where we engage with leaders who are making an impact on their worlds and who want to share their knowledge and experience for your personal and professional growth. This interview was designed to inspire you to become the best leader you can be.